All right, welcome everyone to the traffic calming meeting for Lenox Village and Autumn Oaks. This is a participatory budgeting 2023 project implementation. So we'll talk a little bit about what that means in a minute. This is September 9th, 2024 at 6 p.m. We're hosting this meeting virtually on WebEx. So if any questions should come up during the presentation, I'll go ahead and pause a few times to allow an opportunity for that. But we also have our chat open as well, and that'll be monitored by my colleague Ryan, who's also on the phone with us. Feel free to come off mute should those opportunities come up. But anyway, yeah, let's get started. So as I mentioned, this is a participatory budgeting project. So unlike kind of the neighborhood street traffic calming program, this was one of many projects that were funded through a participatory budgeting program. And what that means is at the beginning of the year in 2023, a lot of neighborhoods around the city had the opportunity to propose project ideas. And then later in the year, the city voted on which of the selected ideas would be funded. So congratulations. The Lenox Village Autumn Oaks traffic calming project was selected. So we will be designing and implementing that project in the near future. A little bit about the timeline, as I mentioned, this all started kind of late 2022, early 2023. There was a process of idea collection and developing of the ballot, counting the votes in the wintertime. And then in January of 2024, the implementation process began. So as y'all may notice, we're already approaching the middle of September, but there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes to sort of prepare for this meeting. And then ultimately the installation of the project later on. The map here is available online on Nashville's participatory budgeting website, and it's interactive, so you can click on these and sort of see all of the details of each of these projects. This here is the short description for the project we're talking about tonight. And essentially all it says is add traffic calming measures on Sunnywood Drive, Oakfield Grove, and Autumn Oaks to slow traffic and improved safety. There's a budgeted amount of $307,000 and $200. And that includes sort of everything from design to installation and anything that may happen in between. Just so I have a sense of who's on the call, is anyone on here from Sunnywood Drive?
I am. David Knowles.
Okay.
And
Excellent.
Jim Papson.
Great, great. How about Oakfield Grove?
Yeah.
Coleman.
Hi, Tamara Payne here from Oakfield Grove as well.
Okay, great. And last but not least, Autumn Oaks. Is anyone from Autumn Oaks on?
Chloe Wallace.
Abby
Great.
Bronick.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like we have got, people from each of the streets. That's great news. As a heads up, we're going to post this recording to YouTube. So if any of your neighbors weren't able to make it tonight, but still want to kind of find out, what's going on, feel free to direct them to Metro's YouTube page. We're not able to post them like immediately, so it's probably not going to be up tomorrow, but within a week or so, we'll have this online for anyone to see.
Just letting you know that John Rutherford Metro Council is on the line as well.
Oh, great. Welcome, Councilman Rutherford. I should have given you a few minutes to.
No, that's okay. But when you were having folks check in by street, I thought I would at least chime in and say hello. I'm actually on by phone, so you're not seeing me in the box there, but I'm here with you.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to the map. Basically, these are the limits of the projects that we have designed. Essentially, we took the traffic calming application from Sunnywood Drive that we had on file, as well as the one from Oakfield Grove. Autumn Oaks, we did not have an application already on file, but it's a short street and we're just doing the whole thing. So that is what we're looking at here. If anyone is curious, this is a screenshot from Metro Nashville's interactive traffic calming tracker. So this will be a place where the project status is updated from time to time as it moves from the meeting phase into construction. But you can also see projects that have been installed already. For instance, these with the blue dashed lines are projects that exist today. So if anyone's curious to sort of see some of the tools we talk about in action, you can look on there to find where they could be experienced. So that's sort of the background on the participatory budget component of this. From here on out, we're just going to sort of talk about this as like a regular traffic calming project. But before I jump into sort of the normal spiel, does anyone have questions about sort of how we got to today or what the participatory budget program is, anything like that?
I have one question. I know that Sunnywood is one of the roads that got designated in the award of the participatory budget funds. So we had also applied for, so like our particular neighborhood has 8 points of entry. So we applied for each point of entry from Sugar Valley Drive, from Barnes Cove Drive, from Barnes Bend, on all aspects of the community. Is there a reason that it was tailored down and we were only awarded funds for the Sunnywood Drive aspect of it? Because how I see it is now that people are going to come in off of Bienville or Porterhouse and they're going to race down Heaton or Lord's Chapel or Porterhouse in a measure to basically avoid the traffic that's on Sunnywood.
Turn it up.
Yeah, that's a great question. So just to clarify, when you said applied, did you mean submitted as an idea to participatory budgeting or applied through NDOT's like neighborhood street traffic calming program?
Both. The previous board started this project on the traffic comment all the way back into 2018. But when we did the participatory budget request, we had basically a large slew of the neighborhood. Basically, I targeted, 6 or 8 people from each individual street and reached out to them that way, so that we would all apply, basically the main traffic congestion points in an effort to slow down the community traffic.
Yeah, that is a good question. So basically what I am aware of is what's available on kind of the public end of the process. So the short description, there's a longer description as well on that website. But I don't really have a lot of history on what decisions were made kind of leading up to how those descriptions came through on the ballot.
Okay.
It's possible it had to do with limiting the budget since there were so many projects spread around Davidson County. There may have been hesitance to concentrate it all in one spot, but that's really just me speculating. I can't really confirm how that decision was made.
Okay.
The good news is if these have applied for traffic calming in the past, we'll continue evaluating them. If it's been several years, you can also apply again, and that will usher in counts that are more recent. So if traffic has like seriously increased in the last couple of years, it would potentially be a good idea. And it's important to know that the application window for that is open now, but I think it's closing on September 15th. So it's it would be good to kind of act on that sooner than later if you all would like to make sure any of those streets are being considered with the most recent data.
Absolutely. With the traffic widening project on Nolensville Road, basically the traffic throughout the community is considerably higher.
Oh
And
yeah.
we have a new charter school that's located inside the neighborhood also.
Oh, got it. And you mean like a construction project for a charter school or a charter school
Well,
that's operating?
we have some kind of little, I assume it's a charter school. The church that's located in our community is now hosting a school during the week. And then the Nolensville Road widening project has commenced from Culbertson Road. They're working from Culbertson up to the Old Hickory Nolensville Road corridor right now. And it's
Mhm.
pretty much a nightmare.
Yeah, the school in Lenox Village is Tennessee Nature Academy. I don't know how long it's been around, but I know it does increase traffic through the area.
Okay, got it. Yeah, well, that all certainly makes sense. Um, got it. Well, anything else before we move on to kind of the nuts and bolts of traffic calming projects?
Not on our part in Linux.
Okay, cool. Well, there will be plenty more time for questions as we go. So just as a broad overview to kind of introduce anyone who may not be familiar with traffic calming, there are 3 E's: education, enforcement, and engineering. Engineering is kind of the bold underlined one here because it's the component that NDOT has the most influence over. Nashville's Department of Transportation is the one kind of responsible for delivering this project. So we're going to choose tools that we're most able to install. We also do education, so this meeting is sort of an example of that. And they also have a number of kind of safety campaigns that they run throughout the year to make sure people are as aware of the dangers of speeding as they can be. And then lastly, we have enforcement, which is great when we can get it, but certainly Metro Nashville's police department isn't able to have police officers in every neighborhood at all times. So we like to install solutions that kind of work around the clock, rather than only when you have officers stationed around. Generally, traffic calming is under the safety and Vision Zero umbrella. So Vision Zero, for anyone who isn't aware, is um, the vision that nobody should have to be killed or seriously injured on Nashville's streets. Um, and traffic calming or sort of speed reduction fits into that because someone's chance of being killed by a vehicle goes way up as the speeds go up. So this graphic here sort of demonstrates that at the 25-mile-an-hour range, where most of our neighborhood speed limits are, if somebody is struck, they've got a pretty good chance of making it out alive. But as those speeds climb to the 35 and even 45-mile-an-hour range, those accidents become much more serious and have a much higher probability of killing the person. So that's sort of what we're seeing and why we're so concerned about speeding in neighborhoods. As just sort of a bit of background to traffic calming. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Hub Nashville. This is going to be a good resource to be aware of in case we come across anything that y'all would like to request that can't be fit into a project like this. Some examples of those would be sidewalks, stop signs, debris in the road, potholes, that sort of thing. It's a good way to contact Metro for just about anything. So that can be reached at 311 hub.nashville.gov, or they also have an app that makes it pretty easy to file requests and post photos and such. So before we jump into specific designs, we're going to review kind of all of the tools in Nashville's traffic calming toolkit. Some will work well for some streets and not well for others. We'll sort of get into that when we present the concepts, but I'll just sort of jump into some of the options we have on our plate. The first one is speed cushions. These are modular rubber devices that act kind of like speed bumps, but they're stretched way out in the direction of travel so that they don't have quite as much of an impact as a speed bump might have. Um, Speed bumps are really short, like maybe a foot long, intended to encourage driving at like 5 to 10 miles an hour. These are stretched way out to encourage driving kind of between 20 and 25 miles an hour. There are different lengths for different scenarios and different levels of traffic. Um, that's a design decision we'll make a little further down the road. They're distinct from speed tables, which stretch all the way across the road, but are otherwise, the same thing, because they've got these gaps in between them. And what those do is allow for emergency vehicles with like wider wheelbases to navigate these without having to slow down quite as much as a smaller car, such as a truck or a sedan or something might. So that's sort of the difference between the two. We tend not to use speed tables too much, particularly on roads where we would expect emergency vehicles to need to access to get to other parts of town. Um, but we'll cover that if necessary. They can be good for kind of odd road widths that we may not be able to get a solid speed cushion design in. Those two combined, the vertical measures, are definitely NDOT's preferred method for slowing speeds. And the reason for that is we know they're a good investment. Essentially, NDOT has done a study of a few projects before and after installation and discovered that the speed reduction they were shooting for was achieved. So these two bar graphs we're looking at, we can see that the average speed came down from 31 miles an hour to 22, and the 85th percent speed came down from 37 all the way down to 25. For anyone who might not know, the 85th percent speed is just kind of a statistic for a group of drivers. And what it means is 15% of people who were measured were going faster than that number. And then 85%, the majority, were going that number or somewhere slower. Where we can't do speed cushions or where maybe a little extra help is needed, we can think about radar feedback signs. So I think we've all seen these before, but basically it's a solar powered device that you pair with a speed limit sign to flash back the speed that you're going as you approach it. So it's got radar in it to show you that number, but it doesn't take any pictures. It doesn't write any tickets, anything like that. It's really just intended to be more of a reminder. If you weren't intending to speed, maybe seeing that you're going over the speed limit will slow you down. On roads that are a little wider than they need to be, we sometimes find it effective to narrow the road with edge lines. This basically is intended to kind of make the road a little more claustrophobic. We'll still give 2 solid lanes worth of pavement, but we don't want so much extra width that people feel more comfortable going faster than they should be. I think we kind of all know the feeling of driving on the interstate with very little traffic. It's sort of wide open and it's easy to lay on the gas a little more. But then in a really cramped kind of tight environment, we drive much more slowly, just because of that additional maneuvering we need to do. A side benefit is it can make it a little more comfortable to walk on the edge of the road if you're a pedestrian, because you've got a line that you're staying on one side of, and you can expect vehicles for the most part to stay on the other side. Certainly doesn't mean don't watch out, but delineating that space can be an improvement for walkability. On really large intersections, we sort of narrow them from both sides. So this works the same way that narrowing does, sort of reducing the amount of space we have to drive in to beget slower speeds, but they're a little more complicated. So essentially, we tighten the turning radius at those corners, and that makes it necessary to slow down and make turns at a safe speed. If we had really wide radii, kind of like you may see on an interstate ramp or something, it's a lot easier to take those turns going fast, which may not give you enough time to notice, a pedestrian in the road or someone crossing the street. So we like to put these in at intersections with a lot of pavement width, and particularly ones where folks may be walking around. We can also do chicanes. So this is where we take a wide road, narrow it down, but then kind of zigzag the center line back and forth. This slows speeds by both narrowing and forcing drivers to maneuver as they go along a roadway. The main disadvantage of this is if you have a road with two sides of on-street parking, it basically takes it down to one side alternating. So in neighborhoods that see a lot of street parking and sort of rely on it, we tend to be hesitant to go for this option. But in neighborhoods where it seems like it'll do the job and parking isn't going to be a big deal, it can be a good tool. And lastly, we have traffic circles. So these are similar to bulb outs in that they are intended to consume some excess pavement, but instead of narrowing from the outside, it sort of narrows from the inside and creates like a mini roundabout, basically. These force vehicles to maneuver around it. So if you had people kind of just chronically blowing through a stop sign or something like that, this would be an intersection control scheme that is intended to force a little more maneuvering and thought as we all sort of navigate this. I will say, in order to make this work and not impede emergency vehicles at all, we need pretty huge intersections, and I don't know if we have any in this neighborhood that could work. But if it's something you all are interested in, we would be happy to do a more detailed study and really confirm one way or another if it's feasible. So that is all of the tools. Next, we're going to take a look at the concepts for each of the three streets. But before we jump into that, I just want to kind of pause again and see if anyone had questions about the tools we have, or we can just sort of jump in and take a look at what we've got designed. All right. Yeah, let's just go ahead and take a look at the concepts. So starting with Sunnywood, and I'll warn everyone, we've got some inconsistent north arrow directions going on, so I'll try to talk through that as we go. But the north is to our left in this drawing, and as we go from left to right, we're traveling north to south. But basically for Sunnywood Drive, it's pretty long, and there are some solid stretches where we're able to get series of speed cushions in there. And we're hoping that'll kind of deter some of the really fast traffic that you all are experiencing. Certainly if anyone is like racing late at night, this will be a less appealing place to do that. And we've got these spaced out somewhere between 300 and 500 feet. I think for the most part, they were around 400. And that's kind of the sweet spot that we shoot for as the distance where it's not so tight that they're like really cumbersome to drive a couple of blocks, but you're not really able to get back up to a dangerous speed before you start hitting the next cushion. So the spacing is relatively deliberate, but I'm also happy to hear any thoughts or feedback about what we've got. And for now, we didn't really um, add too much to this, but that doesn't mean we can't. So if there are any intersections or other tools that you'd like us to entertain, please feel free to speak up, because this is not the final design. These are just kind of a concept to um, serve as a platform for us to talk. So we do want to hear from you and sort of see what kind of traffic design, traffic calming design, you all would like to see.
Am I visually seeing, it looks like speed cushions. It looks like beginning at Sugar Valley Drive at City Mill Court, Alterra's, Bienville, or right before Bienville, Porterhouse, and at the base of Lenox Village Drive by the church. Without honing in on the map specifically, it just overall, that looks like where it's at. The St. Denasis, right there at Porterhouse, Bienville, Loxley, that would be City Mill and Lenox Village Drive. I think one of the bigger concerns, one of the things that got me most passionate about this is we have a playground on the corner of Loxley. For anyone that's in this that lives here in Lenox Village, it's not that they're drag racing through here. It's just excessive speed with the pedestrian traffic, people walking out. There seems to be pretty reckless in that particular corridor. If you go down toward the Altera side, there's a pretty significant blind spot there, basically because of the street parking. So if there anything that we can do there to drive down the traffic, there's a retail corridor there. It's only about 5 businesses. It's got a fitness in it, an architectural firm, a little church. I would personally like to see every effort made to drive down the traffic there. And then on the traffic powered speed lamps, or that you were talking about for the miles per hour, if we could figure out how to orchestrate those somewhere in the vicinity of the playground to draw attention to those. When you were referencing the Hub app, I noticed it said signage. Are there other signage offers that are available by NDOT that would help drive home the point of a playground in that area, or blind driveways, or things that are available to be installed here in the community?
Potentially, I'll go ahead and take a look and see what kind of signs we might add. I know there's like things like slow down, children at play, things of that nature. And I'll look into that. I would say it's worth submitting a hub request for like anything that you're looking to see here, but I'll also take a look, and it's not out of the question that we would include it in our final design for this project. Could I clarify a bit that the intersection of Altera and Sunnywood Drive, you said there were blind spots and like parking concerns?
Well, the parking concerns aren't necessarily a problem because the neighborhood is utilizes street parking and it has its conception. But the way that the neighborhood kind of turns right there at Alterra's, where Block Fitness and the other ones are, in the evenings, they have their, particularly large crowd there. And then there's just a lot of walkers. There's several people in neighboring neighborhoods that park on our streets and walk because we've got double sidewalks. So in the evenings, a lot of times there are blind spots there. I don't race through the neighborhood, and I'm nearly, it's very easy to run over someone in that curve. So anything that we can do in that pocket to draw attention to the pedestrians or to drive down the traffic would be greatly appreciated. I don't want to interfere with their parking on the street, because then you take out the ability for our retail operators to operate, which, we don't want to impact their business. We just want to draw attention to the traffic measures.
Yeah, sure thing. That sounds great. I guess I'll add a note about bulb outs in particular, because we're going to talk about those with some other projects.
Okay.
Might I just add one point?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, this is Jim Thompson. We live very near this intersection that is in question, Sunnywood and Alterra's. And I would just comment, there's a great deal of foot traffic, which we love people pushing baby strollers, walking dogs, jogging. Lot of people through there, which is really great. One disturbing thing to me are folks that come into that intersection, kind of slow down, I guess, but particularly turning up Old Terrace. Lots of folks, it's a fast rolling turn, and I do worry about pedestrian, of which I'm one, with the traffic, kind of careless, sloppy driving. But there are lots of folks on foot. That's the point.
Got it. Well, yeah, that's good to know. So I guess I'll continue on to my note about the bulb outs. What these do, for the most part, is enforce existing parking laws. So if anyone isn't aware, nobody should be parking within 30 feet of a crosswalk. And that's to make sure that anyone using the crosswalk is visible before someone starts making a turn. So if we do put bulb outs in, no existing like legal parking spaces will be impacted. But if people do tend to park at an unsafe distance to that crosswalk, this will sort of help, keep everything organized. So it sounds like we should kind of take a look at that intersection in particular and see if there's anything that we can do to improve the safety. Something like this might be helpful, but we're going to go out and basically do a site visit, collect a lot of data kind of in person and make sure that everything we're seeing online and then imagery is generally correct.
That's great. Thank you. And thank you, Jim.
Any other thoughts on Sunnywood? We can come back, but we've also got two more streets.
Sure.
All right. So on to Autumn Oaks. This one was a challenge to design because of grades. So one thing I didn't mention with speed cushions is we do not put them on hills because there is in one part a warranty that will go away if it is on a grade steeper than I think 7% or so. But it's also just kind of bad design practice to be putting these on curvy streets or really anywhere that visibility might be reduced. So I've found the kind of one flat section of Autumn Oaks where this row of houses is shortly before Autumn Oaks Court. And then this intersection here, I noticed had a crosswalk that may not be as quite protected as we might want. So I noted some bulb outs here just to kind of get us thinking, but love to hear from you all if there's anything else you'd like to see. Sure.
To that crosswalk that's right there at Scarlet Ridge and Autumn Oaks Drive, a lot of times that crosswalk is unable to be utilized because of street parking as well. So we share a lot of the same street parking concerns where people are parking on sidewalks. They've got enough cars in their driveway where it's blocking the sidewalks, as well as parking on crosswalks as well. And it's right there at the turn, so it's kind of difficult to see around that vehicle if a dog comes out, if a kid runs out in front of the car. At that intersection of Scarlet Ridge and Autumn Oaks Drive.
Got it. Well, that's very good to know. It sounds like we should do something about that. Like I said, it's already illegal to park within 30 feet of that crosswalk, but it's not something that everyone knows about. And certainly we're not able to have eyes everywhere for when that's occurring. So if we were to put in bulb outs or something similar, maybe some signs to kind of just make sure everyone knows that that's not allowed. Hopefully that would help make that crosswalk usable again. I see someone in the chat saying that no one around here follows that law.
Yeah, that's
I
unfortunate.
tend
I have two
to,
young daughters. I unfortunately that's true.
yeah, and it makes a little bit of sense. Like we don't all kind of spend our time perusing the code book, but yeah, the more I think we can do to make sure that crosswalk stays visible to people driving, it sounds like that'll be a benefit to the neighborhood.
Are you putting two speed humps on autumn oaks?
That's what's being talked about. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll clarify, it's two sets of speed humps, so they kind of stretch across the road depending on how wide of the pavement it is. But yeah, each of those yellow trapezoids there is where we're proposing to do something kind of like this picture in the top left. We likely won't need to use these white delineators for them. That only comes up if there's like bike lanes or it's a bus route. But the cushions themselves, we're thinking those two spots would be a reasonable place to put them.
I think that's a perfect spot for them. You're showing a traffic light at the end of the street down there. Is that going to be installed?
No. So if it's not there today, I may have misread the pavement markings. If it's
Man,
just
I
a
was
stop
getting
sign
excited.
there, I'm sorry to have made that mistake there. Yeah. So we don't have the funding necessary or really just even the ability to study that as part of this program. It is something you can request in Hub Nashville, but those kinds of projects are typically much more involved than sort of the quick build safety stuff that we're talking about.
Question.
Yes.
Nolensville Road, I think, is under the TDOT rather than Nashville. Is that correct?
I believe so.
So my impression is any request for stop signs or stop lights or whatever would not be, the city cannot act on because it's a US highway.
Oh, I see. It kind of depends. I mean, Nashville Department of Transportation and TDOT in a lot of cases work pretty well together.
Okay,
If a signal here like glaringly made sense, it's likely that both of those parties would be on board. I don't have a lot to say about like the likelihood of that happening, but if they're already doing construction on Nolensville Pike, I'm guessing that there are either plans to put one in or plans to not put one in that have been pretty carefully considered in the recent past.
okay, good.
I can tell you that there's going to be a light installed at Sugar Valley.
Oh, got it. Good to know.
Do you know when,
And
John?
so that will be a new one. Say again?
Do you know when that's going to be installed? Is that part of this road widening?
Yes, that's part of the widening project, and it will be, that'll be at the end of the project when they put in all the new lights. But Sugar Valley is one of the new ones because there's not one there now. But it's part of the plan, and you can actually go to TDOT's website to see the design for the widening project that includes the intersections that will have lights. But I know Sugar Valley is one of the new ones.
That's fantastic. That's such a dangerous corridor right there.
Yes, it is.
Got it. I've got a question in the chat. Are these plans permanent, or is traffic calming for a period of time and the speed cushions would be removed? They are about as permanent as infrastructure comes. Nothing lasts forever, of course, but it is a project that NDOT intends to install permanently and then maintain as it wears down over time. Any questions on Autumn Oaks before we move on to Oakfield Grove? All right. So
When will this be done?
that's a great question. So a typical traffic calming project tends to take a pretty long time, mainly because there are a lot of projects in the queue. So the estimate that we normally give is 8 to 10 months from the time of the design being done and going to construction, and then ultimately getting built. That isn't to say that's like how long it takes to build it, so you won't be under construction for months at a time. But the queue is pretty long at the moment. I will say it could be faster than that um, because this is a participatory budget project. There may be a reason why it has to go a little sooner than a typical traffic calming project. Um, but I can't say that for sure. I truly don't know if that'll be the case. But it'll either be, getting to almost a year, or perhaps sooner than that if necessary.
So in circumstances like this one where basically the traffic's already being funneled off of Nolensville Road through the neighborhood because of the road widening project and basically nothing being done to prepare the community for this traffic, is there participating parties that we can reach out to try to expedite with inside of the community, since we now have a charter school we didn't have? We have, 500 to 1,000 more cars a morning we didn't have because of the road widening project.
Well, and also Nashville Collegiate is building a campus off of Old Hickory behind us as well that connects through Indian Creek subdivision.
That one's already open. It's finished.
Is it finished?
Yeah, it opened.
Yeah, see, I don't go that way, so I thought it was still under construction. My apologies.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll try to tackle kind of both of those parts. In terms of traffic being diverted due to construction, I don't think that there's much the like participatory budget project is going to do besides the kind of like permanent design that we're talking about tonight. Certainly it's worth voicing what you're experiencing and why it's a problem. Hub Nashville could be a good place for that. But generally, we don't have a lot of tools to negate cut-through traffic. Essentially, if you're not able to go one way and for that reason you're going a different way, we kind of need to maintain those different routes, even if for a period of time we're seeing more traffic than we're used to. Hopefully, when that arterial road opens back up, we'll sort of return to a more pleasant volume of cars. Let's see. So I've got a couple of questions about the plan on the screen. So what I'll do is sort of just go through what we're looking at. So the purple line here is limits of the traffic calming project. Basically, that just means this is the street that we're focused on. And what these limits came from is the traffic calming application that we have on file. So whoever applied listed Topoco Lane and Autumn Crossing Way as the kind of start and end points. So this B that we're looking at is bulb outs, and the R is radar feedback sign. Conspicuously, what we don't see are speed cushions, and I'll tell you why. Basically, between the curves, hills, and a constraint that I haven't mentioned, which is driveways, I could find 0 places where cushions could be placed and not break one of those kind of 3 key rules that we use to to place them. Essentially, what we can't do is place these within 10 or 15 feet of a driveway, because that has the potential to impede people from getting in and out of their properties. It just so happens that the way the driveways lay out on the flatter sections of Oakfield Grove, there are really no spots that don't get too close to one or the other, just because they're kind of tight and they happen to be staggered as they go along the street. I do think that narrowing could help in addition to those bulb outs and feedback signs. And Topoco Lane, or actually, I think it was Autumn Crossing Way. One of these, I was curious about trying to fit a traffic circle in lieu of bulb outs. But I'd love to hear any thoughts that y'all have on that idea, or any others that you'd like us to think about as we look more into this design.
Yeah, I'm guessing that would be Autumn Crossing Way. That's a pretty big right of way at Autumn Crossing Way. I still think it would be tight to get one in, just knowing what kind of right of way you need for a traffic circle. The bulb outs that you're showing, are those striped or are those going to actually be islands?
So there's a few different options for how they work. The standard one is striping plus these flexible delineators, so kind of like we see in the top right, but maybe a little closer to the stripe. Basically, we don't want to put out anything that's going to like seriously damage any vehicles or like cause accidents, but we definitely want to make sure that the intent of the bulb outs is being met. So I think these are kind of a happy middle ground where they're flexible, um, but it's also not something that people are super willing to run over like deliberately if they were just in a hurry. We've also
So the problem with Oakfield Grove, so what happens is the top of Oakfield Grove that meets up with Autumn Crossing Way, it becomes a racetrack. And when I say racetrack, we have had literal speed, like drag racers come through here, seeing how fast that they can beat the car coming up to the, it's not a four-way, it's a two-way stop. We have set out in our driveway and had cars pass by us so fast that they are a literal blur on the camera trying to record them. And that is during normal, just on a Saturday afternoon. 2:30 in the morning, I can be up with my youngest and they're still racing down Oakfield Grove. So where my driveway is, my driveway butts up against Oakfield Way. So we are a blind spot coming up from Indian Creek to where my driveway is. And there's been multiple times where I have been backing out of my driveway, had it cleared in all directions, checked multiple times, and I'm almost been T-boned multiple times just trying to back out of my driveway.
got it. And that's
Where,
because people are just going excessively fast up
They
Oakfield Grove.
are flying, and it's not just everyday drivers, and it's not just kids. It is these modified vehicles that come through here sounding like gunshots most times, but it is the Chargers, the Challengers that think they own the road. We have owned this house now for over 15 years, and we have progressively seen traffic that comes down our road. We're a major cut through now. Nobody wants to go out on Nolensville Road. They all want to go through Oakfield Grove. They come out of Concord Hills. They come up through Oakfield Grove, down through Topoco, like Indian Creek, and come out on Old Hickory. So that way, they're not having to avoid all the normal traffic and hit Culverson. They're not having to hit Culverson. So it is, I mean, I joke about it. I feel like I live in Graham Central Station because there's traffic all hours of the night coming up down our road. Some people are compliant, they're good, but a lot that comes through us thinks it's a joke. I mean, I've had multiple encounters where I have like thrown my hands up at people to try and tell them slow down if I've been in my driveway playing with my daughters, but yet they tell me to calm down, that I'm the bad person. But they're going fast enough to realize that they are speeding. We've had donuts, people doing donuts in front of our house, the intersection of Oakville Grove and Oakville Way. So, I mean, it has gotten progressively worse over the years, and I don't foresee it getting any better with these bulb outs because they're going to go around it. I mean, they swerve up and down the road. They think it's a joke.
David, I have a quick question. So we live on the corner of Tapaco and Oakfield. And I think part of the problem that Tamara has communicated is that is kind of a blind hill coming down from Autumn Crossing Way. We're kind of halfway down the larger hill, but it's pretty steep from about Oakfield Way to Tapaco. And are there any opportunities or what would be the suggestion from the city to like help drivers be aware that is a blind hill? If you are at the top of it, you can't see someone coming from the bottom of it, and vice versa. And what it creates is we've actually had a couple of accidents happen right here out in front of our house because people are turning off of Tapaco and they can't see someone flying down that hill. Of course, if everyone's going normal, natural speed, that's not an issue, but that's not what's happening because, I agree with Miss Payne. We have full on drag races. We had someone come through at 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning, speeding and revving their engine yesterday. So what are the opportunities there for us or to work with the city to address that issue? Because I imagine where we have this curve happening closer to Autumn Crossing Way, that's also a danger.
Yeah, you mean the curve over on the left side of the screen?
Yeah, kind of on the opposite side of where we are at Tapaco.
Yeah, I can talk to that. I live basically in the middle of the two curves, so they're kind of like they're essentially two almost blind curves. You can see we're kind of like the two bulbs, slow down part of like the beginning of or in, I guess, but depending on which way you're going. But people still fly through that, and it's pretty blind.
Yeah, got it. Well, so far I am hearing nothing that I like. I'm so sorry to hear that people are driving so aggressively.
Recklessly.
That is, yeah, not what we want in neighborhoods like this at all. So it sounds like are the folks that live on Oakfield Grove generally thinking that vertical measures, if at all possible, are what you'd like to see?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, that
I
sounds good.
I think the striped bulb outs are really, I mean, they'll just blow right through them. And even the radar feedback sign, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to beat them, if they try to beat their record last time they came through.
Oh yeah.
They've had those out here before, and it further down into Indian Creek. It does absolutely nothing. It really doesn't.
Yeah, understood.
And just past, further down to Paco, there's also a playground. And I know that there's several of our neighbors' kids that walk down there to the playground. And, my biggest fear, I won't allow my daughter to do it just because I don't trust the people driving through the neighborhood.
Yeah, further down Oakfield Grove, if you keep going into Indian Creek, there's a playground. They just added a pickleball court. And so people want to walk to do that. I'm wondering, because part of the issue that we have with Oakfield is, like was mentioned, people cutting through from Nolansville Road to get over to Old Hickory Boulevard. I'm wondering if it would be beneficial to look at traffic calming measures along Autumn Crossing Way, because that's how people get from Nolensville. They're coming up from Concord Hills Road to Autumn Crossing Way to Oakfield. And that's kind of the, like, if we had less traffic coming in from where Concord Hills and Nolensville is, or Autumn Oaks and Nolensville, that might also help calm the amount of traffic. Like, people aren't going to want to cut through our neighborhood if there's all these, speed humps and things like that going on. So maybe the issue is bigger than just Oakfield Grove. We can kind of cut the need to, or the desire to cut through the neighborhood off.
Autumn View deals with the same thing, Christina,
Yeah.
because Autumn View has the cut through from Pettis. So everybody coming off of, that's coming over from the outlet malls or wherever they're coming from, that takes Pettis down, they cut through Autumn View, cut through our neighborhood, and completely, to be able to completely bypass Nolensville Road.
Yeah, and I don't think ours is necessarily like a product of the construction or anything. It's just,
They've opened up 20 new
It's the
neighborhoods
easiest-
that connects.
yeah, they keep opening neighborhoods, connecting within each other. Exactly.
Yeah, when I saw the biggest change when they made the connection to Indian Creek, and I mean I've used it. I used to work that way, so it was helpful to me. But once that opened, that's when I really saw the biggest change. And I do think it's going to have to be more than just because if you slow people down on Oakfield Grove, they're going to move to Autumn Crossing Way. And people are already flying on that as well. So it will have to be kind of a larger scale, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah, well, that's all really good to know. So I've heard a lot of feedback, particularly here, and I'll let you know kind of my plan for the next steps. It sounds like we need to do everything we can to see what vertical measures could be installed on Oakfield. It's not going to be like we saw on Sunnyfield. We just don't have as many opportunities here, but it's possible we can kind of look at some of the constraints we're working around and come at it with the knowledge that the problem is very severe, as you've described, and just sort of weigh those two things. So I'm going to check in with our partners at NDOT and my colleagues, and just kind of really take a close look at this street in particular, and if there are any vertical measures we can add, we'll seriously think about doing that. I also hear the point.
Sorry, quick question. The intersection at Autumn Crossing Way and Oakfield Grove. I think one of the issues that we see as we kind of travel back and forth through there regularly is that's currently a two-way stop. And it's not 100% clear to people who aren't familiar with the neighborhood that it's a two-way stop, or you have people that know darn well it's a two-way stop and just blow through things.
Yeah, we were supposed to get
creating a four-way.
We were supposed to get a sign on the stop signs that says cross traffic does not stop. Those were placed up at the top of Oakfield Grove at Autumn Crossing Way, but not at that specific intersection you're speaking of, Christina. The lady who submitted that hub request and worked with NDOT to get that approved, I don't know if they were confused by the cross streets or what, but we really do. If that cannot be a four-way stop, we really need to get some type of signage that says cross street does not stop.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to the bulb, I'd love a four-way stop there.
Yeah.
Because people fly through. Right now, the stop sign is going across Oakfield Grove. So if you're coming from Autumn Crossing Way, you have the right-of-way. And so people just fly through that intersection, and it's a very big intersection. There's a bus stop there.
And I'm happy, and David, I'm happy for anyone on the NDOT side. If you want to come and sit in our driveway and, walks the streets, I'm happy to open it up to anybody. This has been a huge challenge for us for years. So we appreciate the plans that you are presenting to us. But like I said, I just don't think those bulbs are going to be the answer for the ones coming through.
Yeah, I totally
This
hear
is
you all. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, this is John Rutherford. If someone could send me an email reminder about that intersection, I would appreciate that, because then I can look into it with NDOT to see what the holdup is there with the new signage.
Okay, I can take that on.
I appreciate that.
Cool. Yeah, that'd be good. I'll look into it as well. They may know about it, or it may be worth us taking another look as part of this project. That's something we can do as well. To address the request to expand the project to include Autumn Crossing Way, I believe that Autumn Crossing has applied for traffic calming.
Does that have to
Yes.
go back through like the whole beginning of the process then to get approval?
Maybe not. What I'll do is ask and see if that's a possibility to lump this one in. If not, it'll be eligible still. It sounds like y'all are getting plenty of speeding and plenty of traffic, that if we did go out and take those measurements again, it would demonstrate as needing to be in that list. But I don't have that kind of final answer with me right now, but it certainly sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, I'm happy to help and meet with anyone we need to meet with, or provide any information. We even have.
I have a security camera
We
that
have a
sits right there.
Yeah, we have a security camera we can put right on the corner of Tapaco and Oakfield Grove and capture all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I mean that sounds great, but I will say that with or without security cameras, I believe you. I mean this.
Sure. You needed some
Physical evidence.
evidence to take to whoever needs to see it. Now I know what you mentioned, that the speed humps or the speed cushions can't be put on hills.
Mhm.
So does that also then eliminate putting any sort of traffic calming further into Indian Creek, like down by the park? Because that's kind of in a valley in between two hills.
Yeah, not necessarily. So valleys between two hills always have one spot that's perfectly flat. So where the grade levels out enough, when we do speed cushion designs, we kind of tend to find the spot where it's just about to become too steep and put one at the bottom, and then find the spot where it kind of just barely becomes shallow enough and put one at the top. The unfortunate part is sometimes that lands at like right on someone's driveway, or maybe there's a sewer manhole or something. So there's a lot of things to consider. But for this design in particular, what I'm going to ask is, can we take that 15-foot clearance that we usually work with and bring it down to like 5 or so? And that might open up a couple slots that we can put in speed tables. Because it sounds to me like the crowd that you all are really concerned with aren't the folks that are gonna, see a radar feedback sign and think, oh, I was going too fast, and then
Again, I think if someone else mentioned it, and I agree, like we're probably going to see people racing it more than anything. I think right at Tapaco and Oakfield might, based on what you just said, might be a good spot to look at a speed hump, especially since like the side of my house is looking at the side of someone else's house, so there's not a driveway, and like we're the last road before Indian Creek feeds into Autumn Oaks, and then another spot that might work is further into Indian Creek by the park. Because I'm sure other people from Autumn Oaks are using that park as well.
Yeah, well, that certainly makes sense. I mean, it is connected,
Yeah.
and we see all the effects of that. Let me make a note of that as well.
I would not be bothered at all if you put one of these speed humps.
Sounds like it.
It wouldn't be in front of anyone's drive. I think right there we could actually avoid driveways.
Mhm.
We have the space
Cool.
because of the way the houses sit. We have the space right there.
Yeah.
Hey, I wouldn't care if it went right in front of my driveway if it meant slowing people down.
Good to know. Yeah, so we'll give that every bit of consideration we can. It sounds like some like small extensions would go a long way to opening up some opportunities. I'll look into that as well. But basically what I'm hearing is we are dealing with a lot of drag racing and a lot of cut through traffic. And those two things really mostly respond to physical friction to driving rather than more of the kind of psychological nudges we can do with striping and signage.
When you start
Um,
when you start down that hill from Autumn Crossing, going down to Oakfield Grove, if you don't give it any gas at all, you'll be doing 30 miles an hour when you get to the bottom.
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah, for sure.
we can definitely pull some quick speeds if we focus on the hills for sure.
Like
And yeah, we know the neighborhoods like this that are hilly
we're the
experience that kind
sledding
of
hill.
thing.
When it snows and ice, this is where the kids come to sled
Oh,
because
nice.
it's the steepest part of the neighborhood, and which we love, but not when it's people in a motor vehicle.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I've heard all kinds of feedback. I've taken plenty of notes, and we've got a lot on our to-do list before this project gets finalized. I do want to answer JD's question. That is, will these plans be available to review after the call? So the plans we're seeing right now will be on YouTube, and I can also send the slides to anyone who needs them or would like them. We are potentially expecting the final design to be quite a bit different from what we're seeing here. So at the moment, the participatory budget program doesn't have future meetings scheduled like a normal traffic calming project might. And I think that has to do mainly with kind of wanting to get these going a little quicker. Um, that being said, um, if you'd like, we can kind of stay in touch and figure out a way to send you all the design before it gets installed. If there were potentially more feedback to be had. To that point, I'll go ahead and continue to what I think is the last slide. So this has two email addresses on it. The first is the NDOT traffic calming group. So that's kind of shared between several NDOT staff that manage the traffic calming program. And then down below is my email where I can be reached for any of the feedback and questions, updates, things like that. I will ask that if you email me, also email the traffic calming group just to make sure, if I'm out of town or, they really ought to be like fully in the loop for anything we discuss. Um, so copying both of these addresses is preferred. But with that, do you have any other questions before we call it an evening?
The only thing I have is you made the comment about the hills prohibiting the measures. Is
Mhm.
there a particular grade that becomes an issue? Because we've got three major points of entry off of Nolensville into our neighborhood that are pretty decent grade. And I want to make sure that we don't expend a lot of time trying to explore measures on those streets, wasting your time and or ours.
Sure.
And I'm particularly referencing Lord's Chapel, Lenox Village Drive, Porterhouse, and Bienville. Do you know if the grade is suitable on any of those 4 entry points that we would be available for traffic measures?
Yeah, so I haven't checked any of those to know, but I'll tell you the grade that we generally work with is 7% as kind of the hard cutoff. Like we don't do cushions any steeper than that.
Okay.
A lot of times when we have more opportunities, we try to play it even a little safer than that. But if it's like cushion or no cushion, that's sort of that like hard line.
Okay.
And then let's see. I think Google Earth is a good tool for checking grades. You can kind of like check the slope along a line if you've got it. But yeah, those are sort of the 2 answers there.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Sure.
David, I have one question around painting of lines. Is that all included with this project, or would we need to submit that separately? Like repainting this crosswalk lines, having stop sign lines repainted. Is that part of this initiative or something separate?
So usually we will leave like the regular kind of maintenance and striping and things just in the repaving program. Which I guess if you tell me what you're specifically thinking is faded, we can keep an eye out for it on our site visit. And if it is like definitely needing to be redone, it's not out of the question that we would include it in our design, but it'd be helpful to know in advance.
Yeah, I'm speaking for the Sunnywood Drive area. And I believe David Knowles has submitted a request previously for that. They're all very faded just throughout the neighborhood. I think it's been a long time since they've been painted, but just wondering if that's included in this or would be, because that I think will help a lot, specifically around the stop signs and calling out crosswalks, things like that.
Sure. Yeah, I've got that noted. So we'll keep an eye on it, or we'll basically, when we're on site, just check it out. And it sounds like, you know, we should consider doing that as well. I will say all these 3 streets combined do kind of have that maximum budget that's been allocated. So we'll need to keep an eye on that. But with that amount, I'm not seeing like any major constraints that you know we'll need to be like super tight on. So I guess I'll just leave it with that. Same answer to all the other questions is maybe. Anything
I
else?
have one quick thing, if I might.
Sure.
Yeah, this is John Rutherford. In Lenox Village, where the speed limit was lowered in neighborhoods in general to 25, there's a couple of signs in Lenox that still say 30, and then also in Lenox and surrounding areas, there's a couple of spots where the painted speed limit on the roadway says 30, where the signs say 25. I wasn't sure if that was on your radar or not.
It is now. That's good to know. Yeah, I know that has been something that's happened sort of all over Davidson County. We were glad to be able to lower the speed limit to a safer speed, but it sounds like there were some details that needed maybe some more attention.
Was that for all neighborhoods or just specific ones that have requested traffic calming?
You know, I wasn't.
No,
personally
that was for all neighborhoods. I was personally involved. That was all neighborhoods in the DSD because I sponsored the legislation at council.
Okay.
We had previously done it in the USD, so I carried it to do it in the GSD. So that's neighborhoods. It's not major streets, but it is neighborhoods. So
The
Lenox
reason I
and Barn
asked that
Cove,
is
where I live, Sugar Valley, that was all affected.
Autumn View is 30 miles an hour.
Yeah, it should be 25 to my knowledge.
Okay, it's not.
So
There's
it
signs.
could be that there's been some
It's
neighborhoods that are that have been missed. Those should probably be submitted through the hub to make sure that they know that that's still there.
okay. All right. Yeah, that's a
'Cause
newer
I'm just going off
neighborhood
the
that
ones
just
I've
spun
seen
up in the
personally.
last. Yeah, that's a new neighborhood that just spun up within the last 2 years. And so their speed limit, posted speed is still 30 miles an hour, whereas Oakville Grove is 25. So there's some,
Yeah, they
some
should all be
conflicting speed.
25.
Okay.
Got it. Well, yeah, that's good to know. Definitely, we'll echo the council member. When you see kind of an outdated sign or pavement marking, that's a great hub request. That's probably a faster way to get a small problem addressed than like lumping it into this larger one. But we'll also go ahead and kind of note all of those things as we go out and visit and finalize our design. It sounds like it's definitely planned to be done in some form or fashion, but may need an extra nudge to get it across the finish line.
Okay, well, I'll get the ones submitted that I'm aware of, and would just ask anyone else if you see either of these situations that I'm referring to, just go ahead and submit your own hub request, so that we can make sure that NDOT's aware of it.
Hey, John, can you remind me what your email address is so I can send the information over to you?
Sure, it's john.rutherford@nashville.gov.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Anything else?
I just want to say thank you for discussing this with us tonight, and thank you for your patience as we've had numerous complaints as well. So we appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you everyone for your time this evening and kind of providing this feedback that'll help us, design a project that will hopefully address some of the problems y'all seeing. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and wrap up. But again, feel free to contact me or NDOT if anything else comes up. But I'll go ahead and stop the meeting, and y'all have a great rest of your evening.
Appreciate it, everybody. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.